Welcome back to Delta Y, everybody. This week in engineering, we'll be talking about
The FDA recognizing psilocybin as a potential breakthrough therapy for depression,
a Malaysian engineering team focusing on a digital smell future,
a new 3D bioprinting technique that could create artificial blood vessels and organ tissue,
computers using social media data to predict crime.
and a Humvee dropping from a United States Air Force plane.
I'm Josh,
This is Grayson.
and welcome to Delta Y.
All right, so the first article we're going to be talking about today is the FDA recognizing psilocybin as a potential breakthrough therapy for depression. This is extremely interesting to me because the preliminary clinical evidence indicates that the drug may demonstrate substantial improvement over existing therapies. Based on the evidence, the FDA has agreed to expedite the development and review of such a drug.
I think this is kind of awesome because this is the first time I've heard of the FDA moving anything forward faster than they actually have before.
Like going through
their ranks. Like, they've kept things in rank for decades.
Like, how long does it take for a drug to normally go through? Like 2 years, something like that?
I don't even know. It's quite a while, I've heard. And I mean, if you think about it, I mean, marijuana is still classed up with cocaine, isn't it? And that's been there for decades because that's what it was originally classified as. But, I mean, I don't see that moving. But the movement of this is, I mean, these are magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to see things like this move that can actually help the health of others.
Yeah, it was the study was sponsored by Compass Pathways. It's a British life sciences company, and it found big improvements in a dozen subjects with treatment-resistant major depression, where the drugs, the SSRIs, or various other antidepressants have not worked originally, where the brain is resistant to the chemicals using selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And these are for the patients who received psilocybin in a, quote, supportive setting. And this is really interesting for me because if the FDA is to approve this, this is going to indicate that the FDA is going to have to move psilocybin from Schedule 1, the highest schedule from the Controlled Substances Act, which is basically up there with methamphetamine, down to a Schedule 4, which is near harmless. And that's extremely telling with, I mean, it's probably one of the least addictive substances.
And it's a huge jump, too. Like going from Class 1 to Class 4.
Yeah, there's treatments, there's Adderall, which is a Schedule 2, because that's near methamphetamine, and that's used as a controlled substance for ADHD. But that's going from a Class 1 all the way to or Schedule 4, sorry, my bad, not classes, they're schedules. That's really, really interesting for me, because this is LSD, basically. This is a mind-altering drug.
But I think in this case, a mind-altering drug is just what they need. You know, these people with depression are fighting that. And, you know, when you become resistant to those drugs, it's really a hard way to live because you're fighting depression on your own then. And if you have a way to help to fight your depression, it's such a much better way to fight it by doing this and in a controlled situation. That's definitely the key there, I think.
Yeah, along with a supportive environment, too. That's really I think the biggest part there is the supportive environment.
Definitely, because, I mean, these are magic mushrooms. It's a magic mushroom. It's not anything different than that.
Yeah, it's basic. They're using psilocybin, which is, I think, the active ingredient of LSD. I might have to look that up again. I'm not entirely sure of the pharmacological effects behind it, but it's relatively the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll definitely be interesting to see how this one pans out because this is such a big jump for the FDA that they're often a closed-off organization, I feel, where they don't like to do things, they don't want to move things that they don't feel they need to move, but this is something I think they need to move.
It's very telling. It's very telling of the current, I guess, climate regarding the mental health crisis in our society.
Definitely, and it is a crisis, I think.
All right. So, we're going to be talking about next.
The Malaysian team of engineers focusing on a digital smell future. So this is interesting. This team in Malaysia it's a research group from the Imagineering Institute, which is imaginary engineering. They like to imagine their engineering. But this is kind of the second step of their process. So a while back, they came out with a device that plugs into your phone, and it uses a local image, and it's a local file that'll produce a scent smell with a device you plug in. But their idea here is that used a chemical in it You had to plug it in. It was an extra thing, and you had to change out your fluids in that. And it was definitely an interesting thing that you weren't like it. You weren't allowed to transmit that over the internet.
No, 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 no.
Then this new technology would allow you to transmit smells over the internet, and the idea is that it's an electric smell machine.
Just imagine. Well, they have to connect that to the like parts of. They have to connect that to your nose, right? Like the
They have to-
electrodes
yeah, to your
go to your
sen-
to your olfactory sensories in your nose, right?
They have to connect it to that, so they have to go, pretty deep up in your nose to connect it to those that part of your brain, and I could see that being quite painful, but it wouldn't be the end of the world, especially if you're able to experience some smells that maybe you'd never be able to experience.
Well, just imagine the impact of that with something like augmented or virtual reality. That would just add to another layer or dimensionality of interactivity with the space that you're in, and that could.
And considering we have, now we have touch. We talked about touch last week.
Yep.
Now we have visuals have been on the rise for years. Those have been getting so much better. Oculus has been doing a great job with that. Now we have smell. Mm-hmm. Hearing's always been there. We've had speakers for
decades.
Decades. I mean, we're almost hitting all the senses. And if we're able to do that, think of the virtuality platform we could create.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see how that's going to develop as just a technology, because I bet the R&D cost behind that entire thing is fairly large, I'm assuming. But if they can get the cost of that down, that'd be excellent to start seeing that integrated into virtual reality or augmented reality platforms.
Mm-hmm. And back to that idea of they're thinking about other ways. They're not the immediate thought is not to use electrodes up your nose connected to your brain. That is the way that they're doing it because that's the way they have to. That's the way that's the only way they know of right now. But the idea is they want to research ways to create that sense of smell through electrical pulses without having to infiltrate into your brain.
Yeah, that'd probably be the best thing before we start seeing something like Elon Musk's Neuralinks coming through.
Yeah, definitely. But that'll definitely be an interesting one to watch, to see where it goes for engineering and to see how it impacts how we see virtual reality, how we use virtual reality. Could it be another way to interact with virtual reality to, test products to see if, something in it might not smell right.
Or test perfumes,
definitely.
menus on, like, restaurants from your home, even.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be pretty interesting to see.
But it'll definitely be one to watch because it is a few years out, I think. They have a lot of refinement to do to get that to work without being uncomfortable, I think is the big case there.
Well, I mean, I didn't even see a picture. We just saw the one with the test subject with a blindfold. We don't even know how big this apparatus is. This thing could be the size of like a desk or a table. This thing will probably take a couple months to a couple years to start refining down into a more compact package, in my opinion.
Definitely. I definitely agree with you there.
All right, so next up, we're going to be talking about 3D bioprinting techniques that could create artificial blood vessels and organ tissue. This comes out of the University of Colorado at Boulder, where engineers have developed a 3D printing technique that allows for localized control of an object's firmness, opening up new biomedical avenues that could hopefully include arteries and organ tissues, or artificial arteries. You want to?
I mean, this is definitely interesting. I've heard of 3D printing organs and tissues and such. Over the past couple of years, I've seen it pop up in the news. But I think the difference here is that they're going to be doing this in a way that allows it to feel more natural, so that the organ's going to take a more natural approach.
Well, that's actually really interesting because there's something that I've looked into for a while now, and this is called it's decellularizing an organ. I've seen processes done with a heart, for example, like a pig's heart, where basically you destroy the cells around the organ, and what's left is a collagenous structure of basically it's just collagen and other, I guess, it's basically like a scaffold, essentially, that could be used to create a new organ. They could just plop that into the 3D printed apparatus and then 3D print around that, instead of having to use a stem cell or stem cell oriented cell culture and wait for that thing to grow. They could just go right to a structure of that organ and start printing on that organ.
And definitely making it a lot more accurate.
Well, yeah, because you can't really. I don't think there's a technique yet that could accurately vary with stem cells.
There is
Specifically varying the firmness or varying the elasticity around something like heart muscle yet.
Mm-hmm. And the idea behind this technology is to create that variability where it would print, at a hard outer shell, yet the inside would remain soft, not melted, but soft in a way where it's gooey almost.
Yeah, I mean, the findings here could hopefully lead to more personalized treatments for those suffering from things like hypertension and vascular diseases. One of the scientists was quoted in saying the idea was to add independent mechanical properties to 3D structures that can mimic the body's natural tissue. And he said that this technology could allow the engineers to create microstructures that could be customized for disease models, which is actually really interesting because they weren't even looking at the potential organ replacement or organ transplant aspect of it. They were looking at it from the disease or epidemiological aspect, which is really interesting.
Help people live longer who have those diseases and crippling, heart diseases and such.
True. The thing that I find most interesting with this is that it's a tabletop-sized printer capable of working with biomaterials down to a size of about 10 microns, which is, for people that don't know, a micron is that 10 microns is roughly 1/10 of the width of a human hair.
Yeah, which is incredible resolution.
That is that's more than what we have right now with desktop like FDM or SLA printers right now.
Even a resin printer can't get to that resolution.
No, that's crazy.
That's an incredible thing. And I hesitate. I haven't seen a picture of this personally, but desktop size in engineering terms could mean a very large desk.
Yeah, like I have the Creality CR10, and that thing's got a print bed of 300 by 300 by 400 millimeters. That thing took up half my desk.
Yeah, the 3D printers have a long way to go where they're a small frame factor for build factor.
Well, there's ones that. Well, there's an SLA printer out now. I forget what it is, but it's only $250, and I mean it is a fairly small device, but for something that small, it's actually a resin printer. Mm-hmm. A $250 resin printer.
That's impressive. I mean, the trick there is they don't get you on the cost of the printer; they get you on the cost of the resin. Resin tends to be 3 to 4 times more expensive than any sort of PLA or ABS filament printing.
Yeah. It's SparkMaker FHD is what it's called for those that are interested. It's SparkMaker FHD SLA 3D printer.
I'll have to look into that.
It's $250 right now. It's looking to go up, but that price is going to stay constant until they release it in November, which is probably going to go up to $400 probably, based on what I've seen from the market. But yeah, it looks about like a smaller version of the Formlabs Form 1 or Form 2 printers, which is really nice. It's really nice. Obviously, it's going to create smaller prints, but it's going to be at a resin-style resolution, so you're not going to have to worry about FDM printing.
Yeah, but, I mean, back to this organ idea, you're not going to ever get to the resolution these guys are getting to with their micron resolution.
No, definitely not.
That's going to be interesting to see, because that technology right there, just the resolution, could be monumental in the 3D printed market.
Totally.
You don't need that resolution really a lot now, but we could find ways to use that resolution, I think, in engineering.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be really interesting to see how this progresses.
Yeah, so that's definitely one to watch.
All right.
Next up, we're going to talk about computers using social media data to predict crime. And the social media data here is off an app called Foursquare, which allows users to share their location and activities when they check in at various places. And this is out of RMIT. And the idea here is that it showed that about 20,000 users check in Brisbane, but they checked out that
Brisbane out of Queensland, Australia, right?
I believe that is Brisbane. They don't specify it here. They do specify the other one, which is they clocked 230,000 check-ins in New York City.
Okay.
And now what they're doing here is they're using real-time location data, and they're using that to show where people are, and then they're cross-referencing that with crime. And what they're able to do is create a system that will, after a while of watching people, where they go, what they do, it'll see, how can we find out what's going to happen here? Mm-hmm. Because they could do theft, they could do drug offenses, they could do fraud. All these things could be...
Well, fraud. What are you saying fraud for, man?
Fraud is on their list of things they could predict.
Seriously, I did not read that.
It's on their list of things they could predict. And I think if they could predict fraud or even predict theft. That's going to be an amazing thing for police for agencies.
Just crime deterrent in general. I mean, pair that with something like New York's or Chicago's even, or actually better yet, London would be a better example of their CCTV network, and along with like gate tracking and just behavioral analysis based on how a person's moving, how they hold themselves. That could lead for a very accurate, or even for very accurate prediction as to if someone's going to commit a crime.
Definitely. Now, I do have concerns about this.
Oh, totally.
I kind of get some Big Brother vibes with this. And I think that if they implement this right, it wouldn't feel so Big Brothery as much so
more like watchful eye.
Yeah, watchful eye. And I'd be okay with a watchful eye. I don't feel like I'd be okay ever with a Big Brother scenario.
Well, I mean, how are they gonna collect this data? Like, how did people collect this data? Did they collect it from Foursquare itself, or Foursquare let the people know in the New York area, hey, we have a research project going on with the people that are using your data. Are you okay with lending us your data? Or is a government organization going to be using this without their knowledge? That's my biggest issue, is the privacy aspect of it.
Well, I believe, and no, the idea with Foursquare and these other apps is when you download them, you click agree over and over again.
Yeah.
I bet you in there you're clicking agree to share my location data with blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And the idea is, I believe they're doing this without doing names and all the such there. So it's an anonymous tracker. It's basically to show trends, not to show people. So the idea is you show, oh, there's a trend of theft in this area, and it's based on people that have done this activity who are from this area.
True, but again, like I was talking before, pair that with CCTV data, pair that with behavioral data, or those that have committed crimes before that are being tracked by the system, and you have a very accurate way to predict crime in general, either whether that be in high crime areas, low crime areas, wherever it stands. That's going to be an extremely influential or helpful system. Model. The strange thing I find here is that it's both under computer sciences and machine learning / AI. I'm wondering how they're. I didn't read in here where it had AI.
I think they're using an AI system to help create an algorithm to predict these.
Oh boy!
So they're looking at that's another part of the project, is not just using the data. They're creating an algorithm to use this data to even scan the data on its own to find out, why crime's happening, and to even look at how can we prevent crime. So it's going to be an interesting thing where they're using this AI system that they created to help them prevent and stop crime.
Yeah, I'd actually really hope to see if this thing could make it out to be like an open source kind of model where people would be able to commit, and like on GitHub, for example, they'd be able to modify the code there, see what's happening. So that would it's more that would actually help it be more of a watchful eye than a Big Brother scenario.
It'd be
more transparent. That way, people don't have this inherent fear of, oh, it's watching me, and I don't know where this data's going, or how it's analyzing it, or if someone tweaks it in some way that it could be biased towards a specific group, and it's like, oh, this group of people is inherently being targeted by the algorithm, even though no one knows what's going on. Why are these people being targeted? No one knows. Yeah, but that'd be a really great thing to have that be open source. I mean, that's
having
just my
an open source too would be more minds in it. So you'd have more people looking at it. They'll go, "Oh, maybe this data here is because of this." Now it could create some conspiracy theories.
How so?
I think that you could have a group of people online looking at the data and going, "Well, if this..."
Well, it wouldn't be the data. I think it'd be better because the data themselves. That's a private person's data. That's a private individual's data.
Yeah, it's a private server.
Server, personal data. I'd more like to see the code or the algorithm that's coming out of this from our MIT University. This code that's being used for these algorithms, these machine learning algorithms. That I'd like to see that be open source.
And that'd be definitely interesting. And it's definitely gonna be interesting. But I mean, this will be interesting to see coming to the U.S. because these guys are out of Australia, where their laws are a little bit different than ours.
Oh, totally. Privacy. I mean, they had that terrible massacre at the beginning of it was in 1998.
Yeah, and I mean, they're a lot more paranoid on crime now. They have completely banned guns for anyone that doesn't need a gun. So, not even all police officers carry guns because you're not allowed to have a gun unless you're a rancher in the outback, where you pretty much need a gun. To
Well, I mean,
defend yourself from.
that's home to like the top 10 deadliest things in the world, right?
Yeah,
Top
I
10
mean, I don't
deadliest
blame them
animals.
for needing guns in the outback, but it'll be interesting to see where this goes in America. They're citing New York City in this, but I think it'll be some time before we see it in major cities.
That'll probably be an interesting place to put it. Probably New York City,
Chicago.
Chicago, L.A. High density urban areas would probably be the most likely to roll out as either like a beta test or as a first
try.
Proof of concept.
Yeah,
I guess
a first learning ability for this system.
the thing that this reminds me the most of is probably like Watch Dogs in terms of like pop culture.
And I just really hope it never gets to the Watch Dogs level where I can open my phone and start looking at.
Well, you'd have to hack into the system first, which is illegal.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so we're gonna talk about a little bit of a mishap that happened
With the U.S. Air Force. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Happened a couple days ago. A Air Force C-17 was running training exercises in North Carolina, and somebody didn't really do their job right because
Oh gosh.
they were at 15,000 feet, which is their training altitude. They dropped a Humvee at the wrong time. So this Humvee ended up 7 miles away from the target.
Seven. Okay, how you said it? Okay, so it's out of a Charleston base, Fort what?
Fort Bragg.
Fort Bragg, and that was 7 miles away. So it landed where? Did it land in another city?
It did. It landed in a whole nother city.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, 7 miles is a long way to miss your target, and this is a 3-ton military truck.
Okay, but it had parachutes on it, right? That thing wasn't running at terminal velocity towards the ground. It had parachutes slowing its fall a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, they slow the fall, but those things are made to hit the ground hard, and they hit the ground fast.
Oh, jeez.
So it's a big... I mean, this thing hit in the back garden between two houses,
Okay.
so it landed on some stuff, but it didn't hurt anybody. It
Okay,
didn't cause major property damage.
That's good.
Yeah, and no one was hurt from this. But, people were hurt. People were hurt. Their rank was hurt.
Oh gosh.
So there's going to be some people looking into what happened. And
Of course,
the spokesperson was going that everything was planned well and went well, except for the early release.
Yeah. Like, hey, honey, I'm gonna go plant some daisies. Okay, sure. Oh my gosh, there's a Humvee coming our way. Run.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a mess-up, but it'll be interesting to see how this gets resolved. And maybe someone got a free Humvee.
Someone got a free Humvee. Yeah, no, probably not.
Yeah, but that'll be a fun one to look at, and, it'd be an interesting one to see, who gets prosecuted because of that one.
Ooh, no, I wouldn't say prosecuted. I'd just say they probably get court-martialed in some fashion for that. Although I don't know the whole proceedings for military court.
They'd probably get, disciplined in some
Reprimanded in
fashion.
some fashion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some
definitely,
fashion.
definitely.
So that's a little fun article just to kind of see that everyone's human. And I mean, 15,000 feet down and 7 miles away, you can miss. I can understand it, but not by 7 miles.
I think that guy forgot his Pythagorean theorem.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Well,
All right.
I think we'll wrap up the podcast for this week.
All right. That was a wonderful 5 articles that we did, man. That's
Yeah,
great.
it was a great time. I'm Josh again.
This is Grayson.
And make sure to follow us on Twitter. We're going to start posting to our YouTube soon. We haven't decided when. We're still waiting on some things to get in line for that before we do. But once we do launch that, we'll make sure to put it on our Twitter at Y underscore Delta. Y underscore Delta, of course. I always forget that because it's a little weird for us.
We're also launching a Patreon page where we're getting the rewards in order for each of the 6 levels. You'll have access to our private Discord server as well as other rewards that are related to the podcast. We're going to look at getting some merch out soon because we're getting a graphics designer to start doing a better logo than the one we have currently, which is just, mathematical symbol.
Yeah, and we're a little bit better than that. I think we can do better.
Yeah.
But anyway, make sure to follow us, spread us around, send us to your friends. We want to grow this as much as we can, and we need your help to do so.
And if anyone here actually has other articles that they've encountered for research, anything in the STEM field, please feel free to send it to us. That's at deltaypodcast@gmail.com. We'd be more than happy to look at what we have and put that on a podcast for the week. That'd
Absolutely.
be great to see.
Yeah, and absolutely, we want to try to keep it relatively recent.
Yeah,
I'd say
we're trying to keep it timely.
Yeah, within a month, I'd say. And if you have articles within a week, send them to us. Absolutely, we'll listen to them and we'll read them. We'll read them to you, and we'll spread them around. And I'm sure people would love to listen to it. But once again, I'm Josh.
This is Grayson. Stay creative, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you for listening to Delta Y.